Focus on Headline. Now let's take a look at what major issues are making the headlines today on Focus on Headline. For this, joining us in the studio, we have our reporters in Yoon Se-young and Che Ji-hee. Guys, welcome back.
Good evening.
Good evening to you guys. We are now about 10 days into this collective action by the trainee doctors, a 10 or 11. I lost count. It's been way too long, that's for sure. Today is the deadline that we talked about here, February 29th. This is the date that the government issued for their final day for them to return to work without facing any sort of legal action, any punitive measures. Of course, many of these trainee doctors now facing a bit of an issue, whether or not they're going to risk it all and continue their collective action or say, you know what, we are going to end all of this and go back to work. We are going to be getting the latest on this. Tae-yul, you're going to start us off with the latest situation with this collective action with the trainee doctors.
Sure. For these young doctors who have left the hospitals, the decision between returning to work or facing legal risk must weigh heavily on their minds. Although there hasn't been a clear trend of return among the doctors who left their post, some resident doctors have returned to the field in training hospitals nationwide. Indeed, the government has confirmed that as of Wednesday at 11 a.m., 294 trainee doctors have returned to 100 major training hospitals. But considering that 9,997 resident doctors submitted letters of resignation, which is over 80% of the total doctors at 100 hospitals, and 9,076 actually left their workplaces, which is about 78%. The number of doctors who've returned to their work is very limited. According to the doctors, the government's plan to boosting medical school enrollment quota by 2,000 is unreasonable, but given the government's firm stance, many doctors are likely under immense pressure, and some even say more resident doctors will return to their post during the Independence Movement Day, which is national holiday, and during that weekend. And considering their responsibilities to their families and uncertainties about their futures, including legal proceedings, it is anticipated that more doctors may ultimately follow the government's order and choose to return to work. Now, taking a look at the legal responses that the government has announced, South Korean government has completed preparations for legal procedures starting from March, including filing complaints against former executives of the Korean Medical Association and issuing work commencement orders by visiting the trainee doctors' homes in person. And the government maintains the position that if the work commencement orders are not followed, doctors may face charges of violating medical laws and risk losing their licenses or even face up to 3 years in prison. Meanwhile, major hospital professors argue despite the government's stern response, the situation in hospitals so far has not changed significantly, and such firm stance will not bring the doctors back to the work. This is because doctors explain that young doctors are unwilling to accept a policy that do not address the persistent problems in the medical system they have faced every day, and ultimately they believe providing proper medical care to patients in such harsh conditions is not sustainable anyways. Plus, doctors themselves are also seeking legal advice and preparing to respond to government measures. So we still have a few more hours today, and as the government, prosecutors, and police collaborate to define collective actions in the medical field as illegal and mention various legal responsibilities such as multiple arrest warrants and detentions, it remains to be seen what choices the young doctors will make.
Again, I'm trying to get the latest news in regards to the residents and interns because the number you gave us, it's numbers as of yesterday. And so whether or not more of the trainee doctors have returned to their posts, we don't have any updates on this, by the way. And it does take time for them to calculate how many of them were able to return. But another interesting figure that we saw in the news today, I'm not sure if we're going to be covering this, to be honest with you, is the medical students, right? It wasn't just the trainee doctors who are taking action here. A large number of the medical school students, I mean, they're not going to strike or not going to quit or resign. What they're going to do is basically hand in their, intentive leave, right? Leave of intent. And about more than 70% of med school students nationwide have applied for a leave of absence. And so that is a large amount. I believe also something like 6 schools, medical schools, their students decided they're going to be boycotting all the classes. And so we're looking at a major movement here. But today is still, no matter what, the final day. And it does seem like with the current vacuum in the medical system right now, the health ministry has been trying to push for some sort of dialogue with the trainee doctors, being that, again, there's no more warnings after today. Jihi, let's get more on this.
Sure. So on the last day of the government's deadline for doctors on collective action to return to work, the government urged doctors once again for the last time to get back to work, emphasizing that now is the last chance for healthcare reform. In response to concerns that the sudden increase in the number of doctors will lead to poor medical school quality, the government has announced plans to increase the number of professors at national universities significantly. And the government also announced plans to open a so-called regional emergency medical situation room early next month in preparation for a possible prolonged crisis. Now, presiding over a meeting of the Central Disaster Safety Task Force for responding to this collective action, earlier today, the Minister of Interior and Safety, Lee Sang-min, explained that the government's medical reforms, including the expansion of medical school seats, are the last chance to save the people and the region, and expressed hopes that doctors who have left the medical field will make wise decisions so that the public will no longer have to worry about the situation. He went on to say that patients are waiting desperately for surgery and critically ill patients are in need of urgent treatment in the medical field, where many of the doctors have left. And he further stated that senior doctors and their colleagues the colleagues of those who left are experiencing extreme fatigue while trying to treat as many patients as possible in these challenging circumstances. The minister also promised to increase the number of professors, like I said, at national universities by 1,000 by 2027 to strengthen the medical care in local areas and in essential hospitals and care facilities, as well as to improve the quality of medical education. And like you said, meanwhile, yesterday, the Ministry of Health and Welfare sent all doctors a text message suggesting they meet with the second Vice Health Minister Park Min-soo in person. They've tried to have a dialogue with these junior doctors earlier, but because they didn't respond to the request, they were informed to meet in Yeouido at 4 p.m. through the texts. And if I took a look at the updates a few minutes ago, and not many turned out at the dialogue. Apparently some 100 doctors, less than 100, received the text messages, but not many of them turned up to this dialogue to really talk in earnest about the situation with the second Vice Health Minister. And as of yesterday, however, the government's inspection of 100 major hospitals saw a slight reduction in the number of doctors leaving work, though.
Yeah, again, I mean, these are just information reports just flowing in right now, and it does seem like Second Vice Health Minister Park Min-soo was unable to hold any kind of dialogue with them. The Korean Medical Association's Emergency Response Committee chief came out saying that there was no real, offers put in place. There was no solution put in place by the government. And so if you're not going to put any solution in place, we have no right. We don't want to talk to you guys, is basically what he said. They also said that basically criticizing the government, saying this whole charade that they just said in trying to strike a dialogue is just to show to the people they're trying to be the nice ones, right? The good guys, and we're the bad guys, basically. And so back and forth right now. It does seem also the Korean Interns and Residents Association's 15 presidents, the chairmen, all 15 chairmen in its history have released a statement in regards to for the support. But again, we've talked about this for over a week, and so far, we've only been delving into what the government said, what the trainee doctor said, what the medical association has said. But the whole thing with this is that the primary victims of this conflict between the two sides are the patients themselves. The government presenting a deadline, as we said, we have patients group now demanding both the return of the trainee doctors and measures to prevent recurrence, saying that postponing treatment is akin to a death sentence, is what the patients group said. Tae-yul, let's get more on this.
Right. For patients and their families facing sudden severe injuries or impending major surgeries, the current situation is dire. Timely treatment is crucial for critically ill patients, and patients who are already struggling with the pain of illness and fear of death are now forced to endure treatment delays as well. And the Korean Patients Association, along with 8 other patient groups forming the Korean Patient Group Federation, held a press conference on Thursday in front of the National Human Rights Commission in Seoul. And they appealed trainee doctors must stop their collective resignations immediately and return to emergency and critical care, alleviating the discomfort and anxiety experienced by these patients.
All right, so here's the thing, right? This is not the first time that the doctors held this collective action. There was a threat during the previous Moon administration when they said they were only going to increase it by 400. Now this is 2,000. The previous Moon administration kind of said, you know what, we can't deal with this right now, especially because we're still at the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic. This also happened over a decade ago. I believe there was a huge collective action from the doctors. So the patients group are arguing that the government should basically prepare measures to prevent recurrences in case of another collective action by the doctors.
Yes, patients group decided to submit a petition to the Human Rights Commission containing requests for measures to effectively respond to medical gaps caused by the collective actions of doctors in the future. They also advocated for the legalization of the role of physician assistants, or here in Korea, they are often called PA nurses, to ensure stable medical support. But this proposal could spark another debate. Remember, Nursing Act that once was the hottest topic here in the nation. Nurses previously asked for clear distinctions in their roles and responsibilities and legal recognition, but President Yoon Suk-yeol exercised his veto power for Nursing Act before. But currently, PAs are filling the medical gap, which is technically illegal. And to address this issue, the government temporarily legalized their medical practices because they're doing the task originally performed by trainee doctors to deal with this urgent situation. This too could stir much controversies due to changes in the government's position according to the situation. And some patients may feel apprehensive or opposed to being treated by PAs or physician assistants. So what's happening here in the nation presents a highly complex and challenging problems involving not only the government and doctors, but also patients and nurses.
Yeah, and again, there was talks about increasing the quota for nursing colleges as well, and the nurses, because there is a short. It's true. I think this is one part where everyone agrees there is a shortage of nurses. They have a hard time finding, but it's not because of a lack of nurses school, admissions quota or things like that. It's because it's just they're not getting paid enough is what it is. And it does seem like it's true. But the whole thing, right, it all leads back to the Nurses Act, because this is something that President Yoon had vetoed. And now the nurses are going to see if this was passed, there would have been a clear definition of what we could do and a clear range of all the work that we can do, and would have probably solved it. Museum says 2000 there was the massive collective action from the doctors. I thought it was 2001, but I do correct it. I think it might be 2000 or 2001. Nevertheless, we're unfortunately going to be keeping a close tab on this from what I understand, because tomorrow is March 1st. It's a long extended holiday. Come Sunday, the Korean Medical Association is going to be holding a massive rally with some 25,000 people for the rally in central Seoul. So we'll see what kind of results we get from that. Today is the last day of February. It is a leap year, ladies and gentlemen. Only comes every 4 years, February 29th. So everyone, if you guys want to find your girlfriends, now is the time, because you can only have to celebrate it every 4 years. But also, Also,
happy birthday to those
Yes,
who were born.
yes,
that's
yes,
right.
yes.
The rare
Special day.
birthdays. But also today is a big day over at the National Assembly because it is the final plenary session before the April 10th general elections, which is why there was a number of votes put in place. You had the vote on the amendments to the Export-Import Bank Act. You had the Housing Act, the revote on the so-called two special prosecutors bill. G, let's get the latest updates from the Parliament.
Sure. So the National Assembly held a plenary session this afternoon to propose and vote on amendments, like you mentioned, the Export-Import Bank Act and the Housing Act. And as expected, the revote of the two Special Prosecutors Act was cancelled. And the revision of the Export-Import Bank of Korea basically proposed to increase the legal capital limit from 15 trillion won to 25 trillion won, allowing additional loans for Korean weapons purchases. And with 211 present, 148 voted for, and so the amendment was passed. Now, the revision of the Housing Act, which aims to suspend the obligation to live in apartments with a ceiling on the sales price for 3 years, also passed the session with 174 voting for the amendment. So this will lead to greater benefits for the approximately 50,000 households nationwide who will be moving into new apartments. And the National Assembly was not expected to vote on the or the two special prosecution bill, which is aimed at introducing the special prosecutor to investigate in the First Lady Kim Gon-hee's alleged manipulation of Deutsche Motors stock price and the suspected bribery of the so-called 5 billion club, this in the development project of the Daejang-dong region. And the ruling and opposition parties were in disagreement over the passage of the redistricting bill as well regarding the voting. And while they agreed to decrease the number of proportional representation seats by 1 and increase the number of seats in the Jeonbuk region, negotiations there were disagreement when the Democratic Party of the country proposed additional changes to the boundaries of Busan's south, north, and the Gangso-gu region as well. And this was hit or opposed strongly by the public in regards to the original bill because they argued that the regional representation should in fact be guaranteed by the power of the people and not over the bill of the redistriction.
I'm trying to get the latest updates on the redistricting bill that they're trying to pass here because from what I understand, earlier today, the rival parties actually tentatively agreed on the passage of this bill. It's true that they actually, the main opposition Democratic Party tried to put together, unite and some of the districts in Busan and divide some of the districts in Busan. That was rejected by the PPP, but I believe they were still able to come to a tentative agreement. And I think, I don't know if the vote has happened just yet. So maybe the latest update is going to be the fact that they're going to agree on the redistricting bill set for, this is some 41 days before the general election, right?
I think the plenary session ended at 5.
Yeah.
So we saw updates coming up after that. And
Yeah. So I think the latest update, because I don't have the latest updates on the votes just yet. You have to, for all our listeners out there, you have to understand, even though all of this ends to get the, I guess, the reports from what goes on in the parliament takes time. And we only got the latest news saying that they've tentatively agreed on the passage for the redistricting bills there. So I'll make that correction. Let's talk about Facebook founder and Meta. I still can't get used to Meta. Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg. He came to Korea for the first time in about 10 years. During his visit, he met with the heads of LG Electronics and Samsung Electronics in Seoul. He also met with President Yoon Suk-yeol today before leaving South Korea. Sam, let's get the latest on this.
Yeah, as you mentioned, Mark Zuckerberg, CEO of Meta, who visited Korea for the first time in about 9 years and 4 months, held consecutive meetings with domestic business leaders, including Lee Jae-yong, chairman of Samsung Electronics, Cho Ju-wan, president of LG Electronics, as well as representatives and developers from AI and extended reality startups early this week. Following these meetings today, President Yoon Suk-yeol had a private meeting with Mark Zuckerberg at the presidential office in Yongsan for about 30 minutes. There, President Yoon and Zuckerberg discussed global trends and cooperation in advanced technologies such as artificial intelligence. President Yoon also stated during the meeting that South Korean industries are ready to actively support what Meta envisions. President Yoon particularly emphasized the close collaboration with Korean companies, highlighting Korea's world-class competitiveness, especially in the memory chip sector, where Korean companies rank first and second globally. Zuckerberg is also known to mention the possibility of expanding cooperation with Samsung Electronics, citing the geopolitical risk associated with TSMC, the world's largest semiconductor foundry based in Taiwan. Mark Zuckerberg, CEO of Meta, is visiting Korea, Japan, and India, among other key partner countries, to seek broader global cooperation for Meta.
That's right. I mean, there's a number of collaboration, I believe, that Zuckerberg is looking at. LG, I believe, is working with Meta in their, their XR headsets called Quest
right.
3, I think it
Yes.
is. And then... Meta is also looking into what they call, the AGI. That's what it is. AGI. I forgot what it stands for. And Samsung happens to have a research and development center over in the Silicon Valley. And so they're trying to work together on this. So definitely major tech giants coming together for collaboration. We always like that, right? Let's move on. The foreign ministers of South Korea and the United States meeting over at the State Department in Washington. This on Wednesday local time, and exchange views on pending issues. The talks obviously including the North's close ties with Russia, Ukraine support, and trilateral cooperation between South Korea, the U.S., and Japan. Gee, let's get the latest on this.
Sure. So South Korean Foreign Minister Tae-yul and Secretary of State Tony Blinken met at the State Department today. To discuss the possibility of North Korea escalating its provocations this year, with South Korea's April general election and the U.S. November presidential election, and the need for close coordination among the three countries, the U.S., South Korea, and Japan. Now, they were expected to have shared their assessments and discussed ways to respond to North Korea's provocations and the divergent moves, such as redefining the inter-Korean relations as hostile, while approaching Japan with talks of a possible summit together. And Minister Cho said South Korea and the U.S. condemn North Korea's actions, which is increasingly becoming provocative, such as the provision of North Korea weapons to Russia. And they also discussed continued support for Ukraine and to work together to protect the freedom and right to navigate the Gulf of Aden as well. And Blinken also noted that the partnership between the U.S. and South Korea is stronger than ever and is stronger not only locally but also globally, and this thanks to the outstanding leadership shown by South Korea. He went on to say that the two allies are working together to create greater opportunities for the people in the United States and in South Korea, and that they should and are jointly working together to resolve nearly every significant challenge in the world today. And Secretary Blinken went on to thank South Korea for choosing to host the next summit for democracy and said he looks forward to traveling to the country to attend the meeting in person next month.
So one of the things after the meeting between the two top envoys of South Korea and the United States, that there was a statement coming out from the United States, and one thing that they were looking at is whether or not the U.S. was going to press South Korea for some ammunition support for Ukraine. The White House has actually not mentioned this. And so it doesn't seem like, again, we've seen before, not just Ukraine, but the U.S. kind of I don't want to say pressuring South Korea, but kind of, nudging them to the point where, because Ukraine has come out saying that they are short of ammunition, and because of this, they are kind of falling back and they're losing a lot of grounds against Russia, whereas Russia is getting millions and millions of ammunition from North Korea, allegedly. And so this has not been touched upon with the meetings, apparently, between the two envoys there. In the meantime, at the UN meeting where South Korea, the United States, and Japan discussed disarmament issues, they collectively addressed the illegality of North Korea's nuclear weapons development, missile provocations, and their illicit weapons trade with Russia, urging for secession. Sam, let's get the latest on this.
Sure. During a high-level session of the United Nations Conference on Disarmament held at the Geneva office on Wednesday local time, the three nations, South Korea, the United States, and Japan, spoke with one voice regarding North Korea. They criticized North Korea's series of provocations, including nuclear development, and condemned such actions as a substantial threat to the international peace. North has been argued that its nuclear developments are acts of self-defense against the security threat posed by Western countries. Their Chu Young-cheol, deputy chief of the North Korean mission in Geneva, claimed that North Korea's military strengthening constitutes a legitimate exercise of self-defense in accordance with the UN Charter, and that North Korea's nuclear deterrence aims to safeguard against the threat of U.S. nuclear weapons. The deputy chief also responded to criticism leveled by South Korea and the UN Human Rights Council, stating South Korea tries to justify its own actions as conducive to peace and portrays the actions of others as provocative, and adding that South Korea is brazen. In response, Yoon Sung-mi, representative of the South Korea, pointed out that North Korea has violated UN Security Council resolutions by launching around 100 ballistic missiles over the past 2 years, mentioned preemptive nuclear use against South Korea as a threat, and illegally exported ballistic missiles used in several attacks in Ukraine since December last year to Russia, thereby disrupting peace in the international community beyond the Korean Peninsula. North Korea exercised its right to reply once again, continuing the confrontation with South Korea and its allies such as the U.S. and Japan. North Korea has continued missile tests this year following last year, and with South Korea's general elections in April and the U.S. presidential election in November, the possibility of North Korean provocations is even increasing. And in response, South Korea is strengthening its security cooperation with its allies, for example, by conducting massive joint military exercise with the United States.
Now, again, none of them are. North Korea and Russia continue to deny that there's any kind of arms trade that's going on between them. But if you look at, there was a social media post by the Russian embassy in North Korea. What they said was they wanted to thank North Korea for walking hand in hand with them in this fight against Ukraine, and that they're going to bring victory, and they were praising North Korea. And so to say that you're walking side by side in this fight in Ukraine, that tells me you guys are doing something together. It's not just North Korea going, all right, Russia, let's do this, win, win, win. There's got to be some kind of support militarily, some sort of weapons support, and they're making it very ambiguous. And I believe that that same post, social media post, included some pictures of the weapons that the Russians are using in this war against Ukraine, and none of them were any of the North Korean-made missiles or anything like that. So no further hints to this, but again, we have a lot of this. And speaking of which, they're saying at least 25 ship transits between North Korea and Russia have taken place since August last year to trade missiles, artillery shells, and other munitions, according to a new analysis. Chi, let's get the latest on this.
Sure. So based on an analysis of commercial satellite imagery released on Wednesday, Beyond Parallel, a site dedicated to North Korean issues of the Center for Strategic and International Studies, a U.S. think tank, confirmed that North Korea's port of Dajin saw shipments for bilateral trade with Russia on 49 of the 109 days that the satellite imagery was available between August last year and earlier this month. Now, in particular, there were at least 25 ship arrivals from Dajin to Russia to carry military supplies during that period, and the most recent of which was reportedly captured on the 12th of this month. And 2 Russian vessels have been seen frequently at this port, with one of them being spotted unloading containers at the port on January 8th. They also noted that the Russian port of Dunai, which the White House has identified as a window for North Korean munitions, has been virtually deserted since late December, suggesting that the vessels may have shifted their base to the commercial port of Vostokny, which is 60 kilometers east of the city, to avoid any detection. And according to Beyond Parallel, at least 19 of the so-called dark vessels with their AIS transmissions turned off entered the port between October last year and the beginning of this month. And these North Korean munitions that came into Russia were stored in 3 strategic storage facilities. One of them, the Tikhoresk munition storage facility, by December 20 last year, had approximately 280 storage revetments, half of which were occupied with containers, along with a dramatic increase in equipment and rail cars as well. And a more recent satellite image, which was collected on the 10th of this month, showed a modest decrease in the number of rail cars present to approximately 80. So 35% of the new revetments were occupied, along with the continued movement of shipping containers, trailers, and equipment throughout this whole storage facility.
Now, you kind of have to wonder, right? I mean, there are UN Security Council resolutions put in place against North Korea, and Russia being part of one of the permanent members of the UNSC. If they're found to have been trading munitions and weapons, it is a clear violation of the UNSC resolution, and as a permanent member of the UNSC resolution, what this is going to entail moving forward. But again, because they have satellites, but it's not X-ray satellites. You can't see what's inside these cargo containers. And so that's kind of the limitation here. The South Korean government has confirmed this year's official development assistance, or we simply call it the ODA, at a record high of 6.2 trillion won. That comes out to about 4.7 billion US dollars. This is the largest figure yet. Sang, let's get more on the government's plan.
ODA, or Official Development Assistance, is government support aimed at enhancing the economic development and welfare of developing countries. On this Thursday, Prime Minister Han Duck-soo deliberated and approved a comprehensive implementation plan for international development cooperation in 2024, which include the nation's assistance plan for other developing countries. As mentioned earlier, this year's ODA scale is the largest ever seen and represents a 31.1% increase compared to last year. Previously, South Korea has indeed promised the international community to more than double its ODA size by 2030 compared to 2019's 3.2 trillion won as a global pivotal state. It is expected that this year's ODA will be actively used for humanitarian assistance for regions suffering from global conflicts and natural disaster, to resolve health and food crises, and to respond to climate change.
We're going to move on to another issue that I think we're going to be touching upon for the next few weeks now, because the bull run, a lot of cryptocurrency experts were saying that the next bull run in these virtual currency was going to come 2025. It does seem like it's coming a little bit earlier here, because the largest cryptocurrency by market, Bitcoin, surging Wednesday. It actually surged even more on Thursday, breaking way over 60,000 US dollar mark. And I mean, we've seen the all-time high of the Bitcoin prices back in the 2021 bull run. They say that usually every 4 years there's a bull run. Gee, let's get the latest updates on Bitcoin.
Sure. So Bitcoin climbed as high as 63,900 US dollars, touching its highest point since November 2021, before dropping back to the $60,000 level. And as of around 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time, the price of one Bitcoin was trading at $60,158, which is up 5.6% from 24 hours earlier. This is according to Coinbase, a U.S. cryptocurrency exchange. And the cryptocurrency was trading in the low $57,000 at 11 p.m. again Eastern Time the previous day, jumping to the high 59,000s in less than 2 hours, putting it on the verge of breaking the 60,000 mark. And just overnight, the price jumped from $58,000 to $64,000, and the jump was about $6,000. There was a huge up and down during the movement of the price during the day, with the price falling back to $59,000 in just over an hour and a half as profit taking on the surge continued. And Bitcoin, in fact, surged more than 20% in 16 days since crossing the 50,000 mark on the 12th. And so it has surged more than 40% just this month alone.
You got to understand how crazy 40% surge on a Bitcoin that costs tens of thousands of dollars is. And I mentioned the 4-year bull run pattern that these experts talk about. The first big run happened back in 2017, if you guys remember, and it wasn't able to touch the 20,000 mark. But still, even back, a lot of these people, they had Bitcoin that they bought at like $1. $10, $100. Of course, I wasn't one of them.
That's when you bought Bitcoin?
No, I didn't. I can't afford any of that stuff. And then the bull run happened in 2021. And that was, again, 4 years from the 2017 bull run where, like Chi-hee said, it touched upon, what was it? You said the max was 63,900. And it really came close. It's currently at 62,574. And the reason why it's difficult to surpass that 63,900 mark is because many people during the previous bull run 4 years ago, they bought it at the peak of it.
Yeah.
And so they're going, oh my goodness, this is what we've been waiting for. I got to sell this right now. I can't do this anymore. Some people are going to go, well, I waited this long. Let me wait a little bit more and make some money out of this, which is why you have the profit taking going on. But this is an interesting phenomenon we're seeing right now. Whether or not this bull run will continue, we'll keep a close tab on. For now, guys, thank you very much for your reports today. Have a safe one, and we'll see you guys again.
Thank you.
You can listen to Korea Now with me, SJ Lee, by downloading the Arirang Radio application or tune in online by visiting www.arirangradio.com. So make sure you tune in Mondays through Fridays, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Korea time.